Hello, folks. We are live, and first thing I'm going to do is pull back our music volume a little bit so you can hear us better. All right, so I see us and I hear us, which is good. Lance, could you give me a quick sound check, please?
Testing 1, 2, testing.
Okay, cool. I hear you. So we should be good to go. All right, folks, good morning. Good morning if you're joining us from the Americas. Good afternoon and good evening for the rest of the world. Welcome to Code It Live. This is our channel, as you know, where we code about a bunch of different things throughout the week. I do apologize. I think I had the stream info wrong. So you were looking at the stuff from yesterday where we were doing UI and React on Wednesdays. So we do CMSs on Monday. We do Unity on Tuesdays. Wednesdays are React and UI. Thursdays are all things Xamarin and XAML, and then Fridays I do a chat show. So yeah, come and join us whenever your time permits. So I am Sam Basu. I'm a dev advocate here at Progress Software, and with me I have my very good friend Lance McCarthy. So Lance, introduce yourself, please.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today. My name is Lance McCarthy. I am a Microsoft MVP in Windows development. I am also the manager of Progress Software's technical support for the US group. I'm just a nerd, just like you.
Aren't we all? We're big nerds, yeah. And Lance is awesome. Lance knows Xamarin and XAML technologies inside out. So what I want to kind of dive into today is you see us coding a lot on just like hello world type applications sometimes, just proof of concept type things. We are learning, we are fiddling around, but there's a difference between building something that's just for demos or just trying to show it off as compared to actually building and shipping software, right? Obviously, we all know that. And sometimes we have to maybe learn from some of the experiences and the challenges and the wins that we get by shipping stuff and putting mobile apps in the stores. So that's what I wanted to get Lance on today, because Lance is an expert. He has shipped many more apps than almost all of us combined. So I want to kind of dive into some of the things that Lance and his team have done in the past. You will see some Telerik UI in there, obviously, because I mean this is we both work for Progress and Telerik UI, but the goal here is to kind of share some of the challenges, and we're going to look at probably 3 or 4 different apps and kind of dive in a little bit to see how some things are structured in real-world apps. What design patterns do we follow? What are some challenges when we deploy the apps to the simulators, to the devices, and then how do we take it to the store, and what's after? Because like this is the challenge of mobile app development. Like when you ship to the store, when you ship any other type of app, you think you're done, but that's kind of just a starting point, because that's when you start your analytics. That's when you start monitoring and understanding how your app is doing. So Lance, it's your floor. Folks, you're looking at Lance's desktop actually. So Lance, take it away and let's just chat through this.
All right. Like Sam said, publishing is the beginning of a whole new phase. You've spent all this time and building the app, and there's a job to be done after. So what I'm going to show you today are some of the fully produced apps that we did. A couple of years ago, the Xamarin team, we all sat down and discussed how can we give a better real world example instead of just the SDK examples and the Telerik UI for Xamarin examples in the store. We wanted something that you could use literally for your production app. And we came up with a few scenarios: a CRM, an ERP, a to-do app, and a Tagit app, which uses some AI stuff. Today, I will show you mostly the infrastructure of the CRM app and where you can get the sample code or the actual straight up source code for the other fully produced apps. It's really easy to reach to. We even built the page for this. And like Sam said, this isn't specific to a Telerik product. it's something that anybody can take and run with. It just happens to use our controls.
Yeah, and I might just add one thing that I really like what we put out because it's not just very simple one list of things. These are very real world, like most enterprises looking to build professional mobile apps. These are things that you can relate very easily, like an ERP solution, a CRM, and there was a to-do list app as well, right?
Yep.
In there. And then the last one, I've actually worked and I talk about this quite a bit. It's called Tag It. And all of these things, folks, I mean, you can go and look at these apps right now on whatever device you have. So iOS, Android, Windows, these are real world apps that we're talking about that are all deployed to the stores. The Tag It app in particular, that lets you take a picture, because I mean, all of us take pictures on our phones, and then we end up with these huge photo libraries that's really difficult to sort through. And filter, and most importantly search and index. So that's what this one does. So when you take a picture, it calls out to Azure Cognitive Services and the Vision APIs to say what is this picture, and then we store that metadata on the phone or on the device with the picture, so you can search for these things. So just real world apps. I really like what we ended up, the type of apps we chose to build, because it is very very akin to real world development as to when enterprises pick up mobile dev.
Yeah, and even if your goal is not to do a CRM, it's something else that's similar. The lessons learned that you see inside of this source code is applicable to any application that you want to build.
Right.
It be a desktop or mobile. There's a lot of good practices being used here. It took me over a year to build the CRM demo.
Wow.
That's how much work that was put into this. Wow. Similar with the ERP, and from file new to DevOps, there's a lot of consideration and into how it's structured, how it works, optimization, speed, network usage, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, see, that's the reality. Like when we talk about mobile development and we say, oh, write an app in a day. Yes, but I mean, when you get serious about this, things take time because you're trying to do it right. You're trying to support every device and every platform and do DevOps right. And all of these things take a lot of time to set up. And yes, I mean, given what type of app you're building, what type of team you have, your timelines may vary, but this is serious business.
The numbers I like to use is that you can do 85 to 90% of the app within a month or two, right? It's that last 5 to 10% that will take you months to do correctly if you don't have something to go to and you're learning the lessons on your own. Yeah. And that's our goal here, is that we already went through the problems to help you get past these, so you can just come to this as a reference. And just as a guiding North Star to what you want to do when you want to get your app out there to the world.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive in. Pick an app. Let's jump into some code. Let's talk about where people can get the source code, and let's dive in to see what the internals of any of these apps look like.
So there's a few different ways you can get to the source code. I think the easiest is probably just going to telerik.com xamarin-ui/sample-apps. We'll share this. Another way to easily get to it is in the documentation. We have a link that goes to the demo apps, and they'll bring you to the GitHub repo. Now, the GitHub repo is just Telerik-Xamarin-forms-samples. And you'll notice that there is a few different top-level folders. These are where all of the source code is for each one of the demos. So we'll dig into the art gallery one today. That's the CRM. Inside of the READMEs, we went through a lot of.
I will go ahead and drop the link here so folks can take a look at the apps while we're talking through.
Yeah. There's in the READMEs for particularly the CRM and the ERP, there's a lot of backend stuff, like setting up Azure services. The project also has, you'll see it shortly, it has a web app project for the REST API. It also has another web app project for all the cognitive services stuff. The app actually has an intelligent bot with custom language understanding in it, as well as a little Easter egg that I'll show you when I demo the app.
Nice. Can you describe like what the app does before you go into it first?
Yeah, well, in that case, why don't we just actually go to it?
Yeah, that's right.
So what you see here is this is my actual physical phone. I'm just
Nice.
using the Your Phone app, remoting into it.
How are you showing this on screen?
So this is called the Your Phone app from Microsoft.
Your phone. Okay.
And if you're using the Microsoft Launcher on your Android device,
Mm.
iOS doesn't have all the same features as Android yet,
No.
but you can just, on your Windows 10 PC, you can see your notifications, you can text back and forth, even MMS. You can make phone calls and even use the phone screen like remote desktop.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah,
It works out of the box.
so for iOS, I end up using a thing called. I mean, you can always do it in like QuickTime, but you have to be like wired in. So I use a thing called Reflector, which works for Android as well. But it's just if your phone and your computer are on the same network, you can just like make it work like an Apple TV and just like screencasts wirelessly.
Yeah. So what you see here is I just created a new screen so we don't have the noise of the rest of my nerdy home screen. Uh, and we'll take a look at the CRM one first. So the very first time you launch it, here's a good example of best practices. You want a welcome screen. Right? You don't just go into the app and the users don't know what the app has or what it can do. So you can pick 3 or 4 high-level ideas and concept of what the app does and just throw a slideshow up there. I'm sure you're familiar with this with some other apps, but it's not that hard to implement. It's just a first-time page. You have a little flag in there that says first launch or not. If it is the first launch, you navigate to this page instead. So there's our first example of best practices.
Yeah, and this is a good point. Like forever, like we have said, UX should be something that the user doesn't have to look around, and the buttons, the navigation should be self-evident. But the point is, like, you should help out the user. Like, it doesn't hurt to throw up this screen to say, hey, this is your first time launching the screen. This is what we can offer. And just a couple of quick screens in a wizard just helps the user so much.
And in my case, I chose just to pick the main navigation pages. Not all the details about what you can do. I just say, hey,
Sure.
there's an employees page, there's a customers page, there's a whole setup for products and open orders. And then finally I say get started. And you just come down and click get started. Another cool thing about this, here's an example of optimization. While that screen was up, it's really a pop-up. So that behind the scenes, the app is doing all the heavy loading for that first time. It's going to get the images, it's making the SQL request, it's doing all of that stuff so that by the time they're done sliding to them, they just find that the app is ready for them right away. If we didn't have that, there would be a busy loading indicator here. If they went to customers page, there would be one there too. So we did all of that behind the scenes using parallelism, quote unquote, to your advantage.
That is a very good strategy. Yeah.
So pretty straightforward. Yeah, it's like, hey, the CRM is, a relationship manager between the customer and the company. So we have a list of employees, and I show some.
While you go on, it's good to see our good friend Dan Siegel in the chat room. Hey, Dan. Yeah, music was a little too loud. I am putting it back. Hopefully now it's good. But Rainbow's for you. Good to see you, my friend.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, we are all a big friendly family. As you get into XAML land, you're going to see us in the community calls. You're going to see us hanging out in each other's streams. We share the love. So thanks for hanging out here, Dan.
I gotta say, when I first started developing, I found that the .NET community is unparalleled in any other development community. And I would not be where I am today if it weren't for some of the people that I met.
Absolutely.
So just, employees page just shows some cool things about the employee sample data. But underneath the covers, it's doing some cool things that you might want to do. I could have just shown underneath this little pie chart, for example, I could have used the out-of-the-box legend. But many times I see people asking, how do I make a custom legend? So this right here actually manually draws these shapes and the text and all of that stuff to give you exactly what you want. So, and in the other cases, it's just text or out of the box features. So it's sprinkled with little bits of, high focus versus hands off drag and drop.
Oh yeah, and Dan is saying what's on everybody's mind. Like I put out a tweet the other day to say like I miss everyone's faces. Like we show up on these calls, like Teams or Zoom calls, and on Twitch, and acting like everything is fine and hearty. But the reality is, it's hard. It's hard to. I mean, we're not such asocial creatures. It's hard to just go about not seeing your friends and your families. And so, yeah, hopefully you are staying positive and productive, like we're all trying. This shall pass, as they say.
Like I would bump into Dan everywhere. The last time I seen him was at DevReach in 2019. So we would have already gone to developer conferences and hanging out after hours, and so. But they're moving fast. Hopefully we'll be out of this soon. And again, here on customers page, it's just how to use QR codes, like best practices. You think about the user experience, like how would they want to use this? Sorting. So this grouping here is not something that's out of the box. A lot of times I hear, how do I do this custom sorting or custom grouping? So I put it in here. Most of this app is a distillation of years of technical support questions that I've had. So now we have a nice real world app that we can point to and say, this is how you do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely.
So here's just a products page. This is an art gallery, right? Mm-hmm. So the art gallery's products are the artist's work. And, some standard master detail setup. Looks like my projecting slowed down a little bit. On my phone, it's actually working. Let's try that again. Yeah. Okay. Now let's get into some cool stuff, right? So orders is, it's a data grid. You can group and sort, but many times people say, I want this exported as an Excel file. That's not something that you usually get out of the box, right? For most mobile things. So again, I show how you can export it as a CSV or an Excel file. And that's something that would be typically done in an enterprise scenario.
I like the little pop-up to give folks the choice.
Oh, yeah. So that's something that would previously be a little difficult in Xamarin Forms. So this is actually a separate visual tree. So you're not bound by the parent UI elements. So you can pop it up and it can go anywhere on the page and be positioned without worrying about some stack layout restricting where you can go. So let me show you the second part of the app. So we have our client app, master details, backend SQL Server, and I'll show you where that is. But here's the more modern part of it. Many companies want to modernize. They want to automate. They don't want to always have to have somebody answering questions when they could be easily answered by some sort of bot. Now, most bots don't come out of the box with your company's details or like how your company works. In this case, you can use Microsoft's LUIS, so natural language understanding, and you can train it. Inside of the README, I explain how to train it. I take you through all the steps in the repo. But you end up with a real bot that, you can say hello. Any bot knows how to respond to hello. And, I respond with a simple, hey, this is what you can do. So say, and, employees is like a string match, right? So you could do an if else for 1,000 strings. It's much better to use cognitive services because some languages don't have the exact word for employees. This bot can go from language to language to language and transition it seamlessly, and it will respond with the language that you used. Here's my Easter egg. Chuck Norris's keyboard has the any key. So I use the Chuck Norris API with the explicit removed.
Nice.
And, with understanding, it's all about intent, right? So if I say something funny, that isn't explicitly asking for a joke, but the Lewis model understands that I'm really asking for a joke.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm really fond of the Lewis APIs, and then we make some UI for chatbots, which is what you're looking at. But I mean, you don't have to use our UI to leverage some of the chat things that Lance is showing you. It is really nice, like the cognitive powers of conversation, and there are different workflows that you can build in your conversations. It is really nice. Oh, and I'm going to respond to a chat thing here. Dan Siegel is saying, I'm surprised that there isn't a custom page from Telerik to provide some out-of-the-box helpers, like loading views. We had things like that, didn't we, Lance? So, like some of the common things you put in an app, like an authorization screen, a loading screen. I
did build a bunch of those. Exactly what Dan is mentioning. Let me show you right now. So I built a bunch of screens for this. So we call them Visual Studio item templates.
Item templates, yes, there you go.
And you can get stocks view, like a common layout, activities view, a search view, and more modern, a login screen. So I built all of this layout that you can just right click on your project and say add login screen, or add login screen with fingerprint support, or add login screen with social. And it will actually add a page and some views that can swap out this.
Yeah, I remember we did this like probably a year or so back, or maybe even earlier, and this was heavily requested. And what we drop in is just like some standard XAML verbiage. You can change anything you want, but it just like gives you some stuff out of the box that you can do.
Yeah, we basically write the XAML for you and the view models, and then you can go from there. So if you do want just the way it looks out of the box, and these were professionally designed. It wasn't me trying to be a designer. So a real designer did this and said, here's what we want it to look like and how we want it to work. And then I wrote the code that creates it. But it's literally 2 clicks for you to add it to your project.
Absolutely. All right, so Ionix Jr., good to see you. Good to see you. Yes, Xamarin love, XAML love, Maui love, whatever you call it. We are all in this. And I think... who was it? Like David Ortno, I think, had a list of all the people who stream on Xamarin and XAML technologies. I can look it up. But there's quite a few of us. Throughout the week, you're going to find Xamarin streams. So thanks for joining us, Alex Jr. And Dan Siegel is saying, I'm talking like out-of-the-box page that would inherit from, instead of content page, it would be a Telerik page. I see.
Yeah. We do have that for other platforms, but not for Xamarin. So we would ultimately inherit from content page so that you can drop it in anywhere with some like base classes that, might override Xamarin's is busy property and then show a Telerik busy indicator. That's a good idea. Yeah. Might be my next pet project. Thanks, Dan.
I'm just realizing as I look at myself, I think many of you may have this shirt. This is the .NET All the Things shirt. I think they gave it out like when .NET Core was shipping, and like the All the Things part is in green, so it's showing up as purple and blue on screen.
Yeah, I made sure that I didn't wear a green shirt today.
Make epic apps. There you go.
Just make epic apps.
Nice.
Yeah. Limited edition. And that's what, to Dan's point, one of the things that I miss about going to all of these events and social stuff is we get like the swag that is just a snapshot in time, right?
Almost like everything that I wear at home, which is now all the time. Good. Thanks for the follow, Sergey Frill. It's all pretty much conference and like technology shirts, pants. Like who wears pants?
So. Not to get too technical, I won't drill into too much technicalities here, but because you can pop in here and see this on the source code. But first glance at the CRM's Xamarin Forms project, you can see that there's a pattern there. It's like, okay, it looks like this is MVVM. We have a view models folder and a views folder, and we have services that are encapsulated away from the views so that they can be used anywhere. So, for example, The data source for the customers is a separate thing. It's not mixed in with, employees and all that stuff. And it uses Azure as the backend to store the data. And where does that come from? You might ask them. That's this project right here. So all of the stuff the Xamarin Forms app uses is actually in this web app, and here's the support bots web app.
Yeah,
And
so
even
it's all
inside
in one
here,
project.
yeah.
Yeah, nice. Lance, go ahead and bump up your font size on the code a little bit, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah,
And
when I open it, okay.
yeah, and I did want to ask you one thing, since we have presence of royalty here, Dan Siegel. Folks, he is one of the maintainers of Prism Library for WPF, which is loved and used by thousands of developers for WPF and Xamarin Forms. So, Lance, I wanted to put you in the spot and say, like, some of the MVVM design patterns are built into Xamarin Forms. Are you using anything here, or is it just what's out of the box?
So there's some vanilla. This one doesn't use MVVM like Prism. The ERP app does.
Okay, good
In
to
this
know.
case, I tried to keep the boilerplate simple.
Yep.
So there is basically just a bindable base class. There is a delegate command class, and there is, a view model base class. So the messaging and all that stuff is the out of the box Xamarin Forms messaging. This particular app is more about page layout and backend services examples. Now, if we come over to the ERP app, now we're talking some more high-level stuff with, using MVVM. And let's see if we can pull out one of these pages.
I mean, that is a good point, though, right? So it's always the right tools for the job. You don't have to force yourself into a framework. As long as what you're doing in your app makes sense and gives you sanity, then that's good. It gives you the separation that you're looking for. And Dan is saying they have present support for Uno platform. That is news to me. I didn't know that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's very nice. So, folks, if you're into the UWP XAML, the real XAML, and you're into WinUI, take a look at Uno platform. They're pretty sweet. They will do pretty much what Xamarin Forms does. Takes your apps to iOS or Android, and WebAssembly as well. I think their WebAssembly support is real nice at this point.
Without being too my first go-to is Prism, and some others have their own preferred flavor. So in my case, like you said, the right tools for the job. That app didn't need a lot of heavy MVVM infrastructure already there. The ERP app, I was wrong. It's not Prism. It's actually MVVM Cross.
Oh,
People
dang
find
it!
Cross
You
very
could have
difficult.
won like beers for from Dan for life if you just showed it off while he was here. No, I'm just kidding. It's all good.
I wanted to show you actually. So the ERP app, it has an actual login, so it uses authentication. The CRM app, I made an intentional decision not to authenticate, to keep the focus on just layout and UI and backend services. The ERP app is an example where you do need to log in, and we have some, it's a default login, but it's an easy way for you to say, how do I do this authentication so that only my users can access the data or use the app? You just go right to it and check it out. And as you can see, it's a real production app. Now, the next phase is publishing, right? So you've gone through all this trouble to actually build the app, and now you finally got past that last 5% of all the little nuances and problems that you came across. And you can come to our demos to see easy ways around it. But now you have 3 or possibly 4 places that you need to deploy to. And each one of those places have their own rules and tricks and things you need to know. Apple is a particular one. Like, you have to have the right certificate. You need to sign the app. One of the ways that I help get past this is using DevOps, so Azure DevOps and a workflow. not a GitHub workflow, but an actual, dev pipeline, a build pipeline that has these kinds of things. So,
and does I'm trying to remember here. We obviously have what's the thing called? Oh, Visual Studio App Center, right? So, why did you pick Azure DevOps over that?
it has more support for Windows 10.
I see.
App Center, you can still use UWP stuff, but it doesn't have all the same features. And DevOps gives you more knobs to turn in terms of, what I can deploy to. So let me show you exactly why this matters. I want to release to GitHub, and then I want to release to, a beta release, and then I want to go from that beta release to production, and then when that's all working, then we can update the source code or something. So that's what this was all about. So if we take a look at the way this is built.
Yeah, Dan is saying like the App Center builds are really limiting. I had looked in App Center a few months back. I should probably go back in and see why it's limiting.
So say, for example, I didn't have this prepared before the stream, but it's worth, drilling into quickly. App Center makes it super easy to do a lot of stuff out of the box. And if you don't need all the knobs to tweak, you can literally come in here and you can build, you can test on hundreds of devices, and you can distribute to certain endpoints. You also have built-in analytics and error. I don't think I implemented it here, but you can definitely.
It's just like 2 lines of code. I've done it. It's super easy. So I mean that's what I remember from App Center. Like the simple things are super easy, but what are these knobs that you're talking about that you don't have?
So for example, I need to sign differently. So for App Center internal distribution, I still use it in DevOps, right? So I have groups that I can deploy to. So from DevOps, I do send it to App Center, which has internal distribution groups. Then there's the iOS beta, which can push it up to the store and only go to test flight, So if we look at the task, publish the test flight, and knobs and turning out certain scripts. So App Center does let you have a pre-build and a post-build script, but I find being able to type it in here and actually use real scripts on the spot. Let me see if I can show a real example.
And while you're doing that, I'm just remembering I should highlight a few things that are interesting to highlight. So I'm going to pull up something that Dan just said and see if I can show it on screen. There you go. Yeah, so one of the things Dan is saying, like it's easy to get the simple stuff up and running, like for proof of concept, but you really want to do your build pipeline in Azure and then push it over to App Center for distribution.
Yeah, and that's what you see here in this pipeline. In the first stage, I don't because with test flight, you have to have users signed up with their account and whatnot. App Center lets me have certain groups that are a little easier to use than Apple does. So test flight can be tricky. Same thing with Android app and UWP app. Now, what about my web API project, right? There is some support for App Center for web API, but if I want it to go to GitHub after, so you see the way these lines flow, I have this first set for the mobile apps themselves, and then the web project. When the web project is done, it's pushed, it's live, then it can go right to GitHub. Now, all these other ones, they don't go to GitHub until the beta succeeds. So let's say it's all moved past the beta and we haven't gone to production yet. So I push to production, all at the same time I push to GitHub. So all of the source code you see on GitHub is the latest production version. And I find it a lot easier to do this in DevOps than in App Center. Because it's just, it's literally click, add a step, add a stage, and then add a couple tasks to that stage.
Yeah, this is well done, like Dan is saying. And I actually remember this. Like this was for DevReach 2019. We have a big conference that we put together in EU in October, which This year is going to be, as you can tell, online. But we were there last year, and Lance had a talk. And I remember, Lance, you were scrambling up until the last minute to get everything set up right, your pipelines right, and yeah, this looks really good.
Yeah. I can't show you the ones for the ERP because they're using the Telerik backend in TFS and are
Sure.
on-prem DevOps. But it's essentially the same thing, right? Where you're doing the phases, and once it passes that, internally, this will be something called QA, right? So ready for test, QA. And then when QA says, yeah, it looks good, and then it can go on to the public beta. And then if public beta looks good, we can push it to production.
Yeah.
And each one of these has its own way of moving from beta to production. So this is where it becomes helpful.
I do see our good friend Ivana in the chat room. Hey, Ivana. Good to see you. And she's hurting because we mentioned DevReach 2019 back when things were normal and we could go out and have a drink and have dinner and hang out with friends and have a conference. So yeah, we miss it all, but baby steps. I was telling somebody that we have lived through half of 2020, not knowing at the start of the year what this year was going to be, but hopefully half of it is past us, and we can look forward to some vaccines and some turning things around by the end of this year.
Yeah. So the next app I wanted to show was Middle Ground. So we have the ERP and the CRM, which are can be large and have a lot of different parts. But what if you wanted something that's more than a proof of concept, but not as large and complex as the big enterprise kind of apps, and you want a more of a consumer-focused app? The To-Do app does that for you. So you could still have the professional-looking setup with all of good practices and patterns being used. For example, here's the starting screen. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's like, hey, make a to-do list, and get started. Oops, did I lose it?
No, I still see it.
Yeah.
So looks like you kind of do this, and the team likes doing this, starting splash screen on every one of the apps. It is a good idea. I mean, have you ever heard any pushback from people? Because you're doing it only once, on first launch, right?
Only once on what?
The wizard for the splash screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, so it's like a flag. You can store it in local storage or in your database or something, but it's a Boolean. It says first launch, and if it's there, you don't show it.
Yeah.
And I have yet to hear anybody complain that they had to see a launch screen first.
Yeah, you should know.
What you could do is, for the people who want to see the launch screen again, you could put a little checkbox and say, show this again.
Yeah.
That way you don't save the flag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we sometimes forget, we can easily bring back the launch screen, but users cannot once they have seen it first. Yeah.
A good place for maybe a help page or in the about page.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm reading more in the chat. Everything is virtual, so I don't know about Rakia during DevReach, but we can figure some things out, like a virtual drink session. What we are trying to do, though, on Tuesdays, I'm trying to learn Unity, and the last 4 or 5 weeks have been really slow because I'm just getting started with Unity, and coming from a C# background of doing mobile apps and web apps, this is completely different. Unity just is completely different in the way you think about garbage collection when your functions are being invoked. So I'm learning quite a bit, but I think starting next week, what we will try to do is, with me I have an expert, and we're going to try to build a quick little VR world that we could use for DevReach. So at the end of the day, we can all kind of, you don't have to have a VR thing. And again, VR is pretty cheap. If you get one of those cardboard type things, most smartphones would actually do a fairly good job with VR. So we are looking to build a custom world for DevReach where we can hang out at the end of the day. So we shall see.
Yeah, once you get used to Unity and having the game loop, quote unquote, in the back of your mind the whole time, and the life cycle of certain objects, and a lot of things are static. It's kind of weird at first,
Yeah, and the physics takes a lot of, and it's so much fun. Like adding gravity, adding particle, adding mesh to your world. It's just a whole different
Yeah.
world, like they say. Yeah,
And then once you switch to something like the HoloLens, Windows MR and a HoloLens becomes another level because you have you can make it tactile. I'm still waiting for my HoloLens 2. My HoloLens 1 is back behind me underneath the lamp. I use it frequently. Uh, and VR is something that is finally starting to reach more people.
yeah,
Like you said, hardware is not as much of a limitation as it used to be.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then most platforms actually start out having like a desktop component as well. So even if you don't have anything VR, you can still join a chat room from your desktop.
VR is an excellent example of that. So, as a matter of fact, my weekly scrums with my team, we do it in all VR. And
Nice.
two of them don't have headsets yet.
Yeah.
So two of us have our headsets on. The other two just hop into the desktop app, and you can move around and interact with stuff just the same.
Yeah.
Uh, so I wanted to show you quickly with like, okay, yeah, here's the demos. How do I do it, right? I clone it, and then what? So there's in each one of the READMEs, there is a pretty lengthy walkthrough. I try to get it down to every step.
I like it. Like you have arrow pointers.
Yeah,
And
because
Dan was
it's
agreeing with
difficult.
you. Yeah, yeah. Well, one last point, like on the splash screens, Dan was agreeing that it really sucks when you don't have one, and users should be able to discover more about your app from that first view.
It Even if it's just like, hey, these are the two most important things, you can check them
Exactly.
out first.
Exactly.
And so, the different parts of each one of these demos, the CRM that I did has two backends, one for cognitive services and one for the REST API. And each one of these is built in a way that you shouldn't have any questions. Because I've taken tutorials before where it didn't look exactly the same, or there's one little thing that's missing that breaks everything. Because the person who wrote the tutorial took it as like an automatic or something that they do every day and they forgot all about it. So I try to make sure that each step is, it might sound a little condescending at first, but it's to make sure that you don't move forward until that was taken care of first.
Yeah. Oh, hey, while we're talking, Tech Writer, thanks for the follow. We appreciate you. And it's funny you talk about like these steps in documentation, and you're right. Like sometimes like when we write stuff and like that smallest thing you miss is just going to totally trip up somebody because they can't
Yeah.
follow along. And last week I was on stream and I'm complaining about docs, and then I realized it's our docs, and I was like, I can actually fix this.
Yeah.
But yeah, we wrote up a bunch of our controls. So all of the Telerik UI for Xamarin that you have, out of those, we took like 7 or 8 of them. You can actually render those things with Blazor now. And those Blazor bindings, they're not very well documented. So I'm working to fix those things.
Especially with faster moving things.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time making sure that the docs stay updated.
It's hard.
My team in particular, we're not the devs, so the devs try to release docs for the new control or the new feature, but then it's missing something like you discovered, and that usually falls upon my team because we find out after. So the
Yep.
devs are over there building new features and new stuff, and anything that was missed in the past, people start encountering it's like it's not working, and then I look at the doc and see something's missing or something's wrong, and we try to do this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And in fact, the one of the things that we recently introduced to the Xamarin docs are knowledge base. So a lot of edge cases, something that you would see in one of those examples, like the polished examples, you can think of it as a culmination of all the knowledge that we learned along the way. And we try to distill these into individual knowledge base articles, like how to do X or how to do a custom renderer, or I need to do this. So, for example, here's one of my KBs with having Signal R with the chat room, right? So you have 4 or 5 different chat people, and how do you make them all talk together at the same time? And you can do it with Signal R.
Yep.
The whole point of this is that it's not something specific to our product. We want everybody to be successful in what they're trying to do. So if it means something that we're not shipping, that's okay. It's like we want you to get it to work. And I just take you through it. But this is an example of one of the KVs.
Yeah, no, this is very good. I mean, this is real world, right? Because I mean, a lot of times when we look at like one framework, it's rarely ever just one thing that you're doing everything in. It's all about the integrations. Like maybe you're using something UI. How does it work with Signalar? How does it work with like a cloud backend? So the more integrations we can show for any platform, those things help.
So for example, this morning, right before the stream, I built a custom progress bar. So someone asked the other day, it's like, how do I have a custom animation in the loading indicator? Because out of the box, the loading indicator is just spinners, right? They're infinite spinners. Someone's like, I want to actually show progress. And that's what I did. I spun up a quick test app. I built an HTTP client request that actually reports how much of the stream has been downloaded. And it gets that number and we can update the UI with it. Now, that's kind of custom development. Where does that belong in a product's documentation? And it doesn't necessarily belong there. So the knowledge base just makes this super easy. And here's what it looks like. Go back to images.
Oh, Dan.
And I threw in a little flag in there, right? So instead of the progress bar filling something up, I thought, why not have it reveal what's underneath?
Sure.
So it kind of looks like it's filling up, but really what's happening is there's a white bar on top of it that is slowly moving and revealing what's behind it until the width is 0 when it reaches 100% download.
Yeah, good stuff, yeah.
You know?
And real good. I thought we had something built in.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
But this is actually the busy indicator itself.
Yeah. Okay, that's very good. Yeah, Dan was saying like progress doesn't show you progress. Yes, Dan, we're fixing it. Yeah. And
so the reason for this tangent is just to show that we try to, give you resources that help you get to that last mile and past it. I think the next thing now would really be like monitoring and analytics and how do you measure the health of your app after the fact. This can largely depend on the store you're using. The Microsoft Store does have some built-in analytics, but you can just use like App Center's analytics.
Yeah.
So you would add these as a NuGet package. Let me show you. It's literally one line of code.
It is one line of code.
Yeah. So inside of the app, actually I can't show you that online because it has my private keys in it. But basically, it's one line of code in the app file, and then you go to App Center, and you see the crashes. This is from my app Hacked. So on Windows 10, I have an app that lets you little self plug here. It's an app that keeps monitoring if your email or account have been in any breaches. Like, have I been part of? And things can go wrong. And for one line of code in my App Center shows me all of this stuff, right? All the exceptions that are happening, and it does it without violating the user's trust. That's one of the things I like about it. But just throw in whatever your analytics platform choice is. I'm not advocating specifically for this. If you have one that you like or prefer better, use that. Yep. You can have your own built-in one. You can keep a collection of exception messages and then mail it at another later point in time. But the point is to keep an idea of what's going on after you pushed it out, because you can't cover all of the different devices. Well, you could try. You could use testing in App Center and try it on a bunch of different devices.
Yeah, there's no way you can test on every device.
Yeah.
So this is the old Xamarin. What was it called? The old service, the testing lab.
Hockey app.
Yeah, well, the hockey app was for all of the things that they purchased, but
Oh, the
Telerik,
device system.
yeah, the device lab, I think, yeah, the device cloud, yes. So they had that thing in Boston, and it was nice.
Yeah. So in here, like in App Center, you can actually select a whole bunch of different devices to run it on. I haven't set it up for this, but basically you come in here, you click test. I think it only works for iOS and Android right now, but you can select what kind of device sets you want, there's a lot of knobs you can turn.
Yeah.
But what they don't do, I think, is those edge cases, like users in the shower using our app, and it's like I can't upload a picture when I'm taking a shower. Like you get the weirdest reviews, and that crash would actually show up here.
Cool. Speaking of subtle pitches, Dan is saying you should use mobile build tools to conceal your private keys. Yeah, is that something Dan?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's built because I saw you building it. So Dan, feel free to just plug your Twitch stream. I'm going to highlight it so folks can see you build it or work on it as we move forward. So yeah,
That's a good tip, right? If you are open sourcing, and make sure you don't publish your keys.
Absolutely. So yeah, folks, if you are into Prism, if you are into any of the things we're talking about and build tools, I'm waiting for the message to show up so I can highlight it. Yeah, go take a look at what Dan is doing with mobile build tools. While I'm waiting here, for some reason it's not showing up the last message. Oh, it's a link maybe. No, it shows up. Okay, I'll keep looking for that. While I'm doing that, Lance, we got probably about 10 more minutes left. Maybe show us like one thing, like pick any of these 4 apps, right? And show us one thing in code that you're proud of and one thing you'd rather not have in there.
Okay. So I think probably the introduction of the custom language understanding. So what we see here in front of us is the way a bot app works. So just at a high level, it's a web app. It's an ASP.NET web app. And the controller is, quote unquote, it's a dialogue. It's kind of like a Vue controller where it has endpoints, but built into the framework, we have messages controller. And it's just like any other API controller, except it understands how to work with the bot framework to the API here. So bot builder dialogues. You can have many different dialogues. I only needed one. So the support dialog is this particular bot. And that's the class we're looking at here. So inside the message that comes in, the first thing I do is I look at the text analytics. I detect what language it is. So the thing that I'm most proud of is that I can go and detect the language, I translate it into English, then I put it against my model to train for what understanding it is, and then I translate it back to their language. If I had more time, I would train natural language understanding in all the native languages, but as a V1, I just translate it into English. The bot, the natural language understands English, and then we'll translate it back. That can end up with some funny scenarios, which I haven't seen yet, but I assume there will be. So it's just basically detect what language, and then we figure out the language's code. It's ISO code, so it's pretty standard. .NET understands what ISO codes are. So if I couldn't detect what language it was, or it was just gibberish, I just reply with a message saying, sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Now, if you notice in the source code, I try to make it clearer by putting some nice long comments to separate the sections so it's easy to read. So the next section, we're going to translate it. The translation service is just part of the API. It's literally just a few lines of code. There we go. I translated the whole message. Now here's where the cool part comes in. So now we have the user's request or whatever they said. I want to understand what they're saying. This is where you might have a huge if-else statement saying all the different possible conditions that might have happened. That could be millions of lines of code. but instead we're using Lewis to understand what's going on. And I get the intent. So basically the intent is what the result of the AI determined what the intent was the user was asking for, and that's what I trained it for. So in the training, I say, what was their intent to be asking about employees? Was the intent about products? Was the intent about a joke? And then rule it out and I respond. So basically, if the intent was greeting, that's like, hi, bienvenido. I said that wrong. But Spanish, English, whatever, it all gets translated and I can determine whether or not they're just saying hi. Then I respond with a little statement. If they're asking about employees, customers, products, orders, shipping, help, cancel, and joke. So within maybe 20 if else or switch statement, I can handle thousands of different possible, questions that they might ask. I have yet to find any real problem with this yet, but eventually it will happen. I'll probably have to expand this a little more. But I would say it's pretty robust. It's better than I expected. And that's what I'm most proud of. And here's where we reply in their native language. So from the user's perspective, they had no idea it was translated to English, vetted for the intent in English, and then responded back in their native language. Even the joke would be returned. Now, for the final piece, what if what the user said was angry or very happy? There is a sentiment AI, and the API for that sentiment AI cognitive services will tell you the score from 0 to 1. And if the person was angry and says something like, this is horrible support, I'm never going to get this app again, I'm going to delete it right now, the bot will actually respond with, I'm sorry you're having problems, and give them an actual email to talk to a human. In a real world app, you might give them the option to switch to a chat with a real person, but the whole concept is to handle when they're upset. Or, on the other hand, if they're super happy, let's say they're in the top 3%, this is a good time to ask for an app review, right? It's a good way to get a 5-star review. So if they're super happy, I say, hey, consider leaving an app review. I would probably, to update this, I would probably add a button that automatically opens up to the store and does it for them. But that's pretty much it. And
this is pretty sweet. I dropped a link, folks, if you're watching, to Lewis.ai and the cognitive services text analysis and the sentiment analysis that you talked about, Lance. These are just beautiful RESTful endpoints, beautiful services that just give you so much out of the box. And it's good to see that you're taking the intent and just breaking it down a little bit more and offering custom things.
I don't remember which one I used, but basically Lewis AI. Let me go back to the homepage. So the text analytics will give you some great stuff out of the box. But what if you did need some, more business focused stuff? For example, I'm a manufacturing company and I make robots, and the robots make robots, and I need my chat to understand robot talk. So you would come in here and you could train the model to understand the different industry terms and, and respond accordingly. And basically it's just, you add all the words that you want it to recognize and you weight them. Pretty straightforward. It's a lot easier than trying to do machine learning directly.
For sure. I wasn't getting the Eric Cartman reference that Dan was talking about. It's South Park, yes, of course. Yeah, okay. Anything you want to refactor? Anything that you don't like in any of these code bases?
I think I would add some more tweaks, not necessarily refactor, because I have gone through a few refactor phases as we've gotten closer to production. So I spent a week going through making things faster, using less memory. But what I would like to do is add those little cherries on top. A good example is in the chatbot. if it did say, well, we're happy that, you love the app, would you like to leave a review? It would add another message with the button, because the chat control lets you have different controls, not just text. So in the case of the CRM app, I would let's go talk to the bot. Let's see if we can get it to give me a high response. Let's see if that works. So that right there is when it doesn't recognize the question. So instead of just saying, sorry, there's an error, you can give them a way out so that you don't back them into a corner. I'm not sure what went wrong there. So let's try that. So it thought I wanted help. So I guess there's something to improve with the analytics and the Lewis understanding. And see the two different ways I did give the user the way out. One is the email, one is the phone number. What might be happening is that part of the code is crashing, the sentiment, and it falls back on sending this instead. So back up in the bot, at the bottom, respond to sentiment is probably a bug in here. So I'll see what's going on with that. Guess that was a self-fulfilling prophecy. What can be improved in the app? Yes.
Right there. Yeah. Well, there's always things to improve, but this was excellent. This is just a walkthrough of all the things we do and all the things you do to push out an app, and how you kind of wrap everything together and how you keep an eye out on things. This is quite eye-opening.
And even if you're close to release and you're an app that you're working on now, and you might want to look at what could be changed or work better, it might take you 30 minutes just to browse through the code and say like, oh, I'm doing my service class like this, or I'm writing to disk like this. You could just use it as a quick reference, or you can use it as a big getting started project and spend a day or two with them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like I would often just jump into a full code base and just take a look at how things are structured that I can replicate in my app. How do I do this little thing that somebody else did? So that's a really good point. So Lance, thank you for all that you do. Thanks for this walkthrough. And folks, if you are watching this now with us or later on, that's the URL, so you can go and look at some source code of real apps that are in production that can hopefully churn some ideas and have a little fun maybe running these apps and see what they do.
So Dan just gave me a feature request. When there's an angry, I respond with Eric Hartman.
There you go.
Excellent.
All right, folks. I think that's going to be a wrap for this Xamarin Thursday. I'm going to do a chat show again tomorrow, and I'm excited to have a good friend join us. But thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Dan, for hanging out with us, Dan and everybody else. We love you. We love you all, and come and join us whenever you have time. One thing I'm going to do is, since we talked a little bit about Unity, I'm going to hand you over to Lana Lux, because I think she is doing some game dev, which should be fun. Okay? All right, so thank you again, folks. We love you, and we shall see you next time. All right? Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye, everybody.